This is More Than 5%, a podcast dedicated to covering the stories of women in sports. Whatever the sport, whatever the role, everyone is welcome. Now, let's join our hosts, Zoe Hicks and Carly Jackson, for a weekly conversation with women who inspire.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to More Than 5%, a podcast that's dedicated to women in sport and women's sports. Today, we're going to be talking to someone who is huge in the women's sports arena, loves women's hockey, supports women's hockey. Carly, take it away.
Yeah, this is your co-host, Carly Jackson. I'm super happy to announce today that we're having Mike Murphy on the More Than 5% podcast. So you're going to have to give me a second here to explain Mike's bio and just some more information about him. Mike Murphy, truly an unsung hero of women's hockey. He is an expert statistician. He is the creator of Their Hockey Counts, an interim managing editor at the Ice Garden, the deputy managing editor at Blue Shirt Banter, contributor for Sporting News and the Hockey Graphs, and a co-creator of BehindTheBenches.com. He's also a leader and creator of PHF Fantasy Hockey, at least for I know the last 2 seasons where I've submitted my own team into the fantasy hockey draft. He's a trailblazer of resources from salary disclosure to agency information in the PHF. He is an amazing Twitter personality, caretaker of Franklin the Cat, and overall someone who makes the world a better place. Mike Murphy, thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh my gosh. Like every time I'm on a podcast and my bio is read to me, I'm like, I do too many things, but I'm very much approve of caretaker of Franklin the Cat. I'm sure he'll approve of that too. That's very, very kind. I don't deserve most of that, but it's very nice to hear those lovely things. Thank you.
Oh, you absolutely do. And let us know what Franklin thinks of the podcast as well.
He's a big fan already. Anything that results in me listening to something, especially while I work, and he just paws at me randomly and gets treats. That's kind of the arrangement. That's his job, is keeping me company, and sleeping 18 hours a day. He's got a rough life.
Oh yeah, and getting treats every once in a while. Sign me up.
Yeah, wake up for treats. Yeah, not a bad gig. Yeah.
Oh, big time.
Every time we start our podcast, we're going to start with a little bit of good shit just to kind of convince our brains to focus on the good stuff instead of the bad stuff. So today I actually went to my very first Pride parade that I've ever in my entire life. And it was amazing. There was multiple times where I cried. I had the best day. I was just like dancing around and enjoying being in such a queer space. I loved it. And yeah, that's my good shit. Carly?
My good shit for the day is today in practice. I just made a really satisfying and just a happy glove save, and it totally made my day. So that's my good shit for the day, just snagging a puck out of the air.
My good shit for the day is I caught up on some much needed sleep, always a good thing. And I got to see the first iteration of a website work on. CJ mentioned salary disclosure and stuff. So the women's hockey version of Cat Friendly is going to be launching pretty soon, which is super neat. So going to make that a resource that's accessible to everyone, hopefully helps everyone out. And seeing the idea become something I can look at, I was like, wow, it's nice to have smart friends. It was very, very cool to see.
That's awesome. We love to hear it. We love to hear it. All right, so let's get into it. And I would love to start from the beginning, Mike, just kind of some of your history and how the heck you got into the game. Why did you start loving women's hockey?
So I grew up, I didn't have a choice. I had to be a hockey fan and a Rangers fan. I have 5 brothers, 4 older brothers. And it was really clear to me early on that I could like the New York Rangers and like hockey, or I could get beat up more by my older brothers. It was pretty much a no-brainer. Yeah, we'll play hockey. But also came in handy. I was born into a family, we had our own, our own starting lineup. That was what kind of got me involved in hockey in the first place. I had always enjoyed writing. I started to write a lot about the Rangers. I wrote at Blue Shirt Banner is kind of how I broke into hockey journalism and just analysis, blogging, all that stuff. And I always loved women's hockey. The problem is it was the Olympics or it's the Worlds, and then it was just gone. Got these little 5 or 6 or 7 game little glimpses of it, and then it would go away. And I was like, this is not great. The CWHL came around, but being from New Jersey and didn't have access to D1 other than Princeton, that was too far away. And it wasn't there. And then 2015 came, the NWHL broke onto the scene. They had a team in Brooklyn. And I saw it as an opportunity. It's like, hey, I cover the Rangers. Why don't I cover New York's women's team? It made perfect sense to me. I showed up for that first press conference, that first practice of the Riveters, and that was it. That was a goner. I was just like, this is amazing. Like I got to getting to talk, like you know this pretty well, CJ, like the barriers between media and players, very different in the women's hockey world. And it can be a really wonderful experience. And the thing that you can't escape is like, talking to kids just out of college. It's like, yeah, I have to drive 3 hours to get to practice twice a week, and I have a full-time job. And I'm like, what are you doing? That's insane. But you meet these people who love hockey even more than you do. And I was looking around and like, someone's got to tell these stories. These people are so hardcore, like so diehard about hockey, and they're so good. As the thing is, I thought of all the time is, there's Team Canada, Team USA. It's 50 athletes, hundreds and hundreds of athletes that are, the top of the sport. And that's just thinking about North America, like let alone what's going on in Europe and the pro game there and the post-collegiate game there. And like I just got into it, started covering women's hockey, covered the NWHL, the CWHL, joined the Ice Garden when that came around, did a lot of freelance writing in women's hockey, got involved in the stats stuff just because like no one was doing the stats stuff. And I was like, I could do this. Fast forward to where I am today, I was like, oh boy, that was a decision I made. Spent a lot of hours looking at tape and box scores, making sure things are right. But that's kind of the road that got me here is I just went to it, finally got to my first game, acknowledged like what was going on here was really special, that this was something that I felt like I was deprived of. Like it was a part of this game that I love with all my heart. It's a huge part of my family. It's huge. Like my family's not very religious, but we have hockey. Like that's something we have is like it's this unifying thing. It's like when stuff is tough and like my brothers and I don't know what to talk about, we'll just talk about hockey. Because then like that'll get us back onto the road of like, all right, we'll figure out whatever's going on through drama. It felt like I was missing a huge bunch of chapters of that. And that's what I felt like I found in women's hockey is this whole other part of this game that I love. And that was, like I said, that was it. Showed up. It was kind of game over from there.
Wow, that's amazing. And I loved, what you said about your love for the game and meeting people who love the game as much as you do. And, I can certainly speak from personal experience that people like you make a difference as an athlete in the league. And also from personal experience, people like you have inspired, I think, me and Zoe to start our own podcast and bring more content and coverage and I guess embody your work and things that you've done to elevate the standard and elevate the game. So, just thank you for all that you've done. And I would love hearing your story and I hope our listeners do as well.
This is going to be dangerous. Mike's going to cry every 5 minutes. You're going to have to be careful here. The CJ is going to get rough.
It's all good. All right. Awesome. I love it. Okay. I'd love to get into your work as a statistician. So what do you like about it? You mentioned that you had gotten into it because it felt like, there was a part that was missing, but what do you like about it as especially someone who I can certainly, attest to as an expert in that category and has certainly made a difference, in my own experience, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I always tell the story. I was really bad at math all my life. I love telling this story is the highest I ever got in education math was math for the liberal arts at community college, like which was pretty much just like, here's how I use the spreadsheet. And I was like, sweet, good stuff. Auto sums, that's going to come in handy, I'm sure. But like math never appealed to me until it could do stuff for me. And sports, it began to do things for me. I got into using analytics in my work in men's hockey. And it was just something that like, I just wanted to add another dimension to my coverage. I wanted to be able to be more fluent in that part of the game. Just like, I would read books about coaching and tactics. Like I wanted to know like, why'd that guy dump it in? Like, why didn't you just carry it in? Well, everyone had been on the ice for 40 seconds. They needed a line change. It's like, but always carry it in the zone. When I wanted to start covering women's hockey, I was like, all right, I'm going to use stats just like I use in men's hockey. And they weren't there. And I was looking around like, this is not good. Don't we need this? And so I just kind of slowly taught myself the basics of just, what can we do with really basic stats? And the answer is a lot more than you might think. And I got really into it and passionate about it because to me, stats help tell the story. Like they capture events, they capture history. And one of the things I did with their hockey counts is I just went back to all the major tournaments where like data was just missing. And I was like, that's not okay, everyone, that like we don't have some of the stats from like the Olympics and world championships. And they're just like, the IHF basement where these things were stored like flooded. And so they just got destroyed and everyone was like, oh, that's too bad. It's like, no, 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 no. It's not just too bad. Let's go get them. Like, let's rebuild it. To me, it's the history. Like, it's the story of what happened. It's not a perfect telling because, as you know, there's so much more that goes on than, it was a 4-2 game. It doesn't tell you anything, right? But they help tell the story. And the more I got into it, the more like deep into history I got, the more I came to appreciate like this is how we measure greatness. It's how we capture achievements, like and milestones. Like when you have, 45 or 50 saves in a game, I want to be able to tell people like that's nuts. You understand how crazy that is? That doesn't happen. That happens once in a blue moon. And we don't get to do those things without stats. And I think that's what's so great about it is they can help tell the story better. They can help us identify those special moments that are like this is excellence we're seeing. And we know that because we can measure certain markers of like this is not normal to be this good, or this is not normal for a team to have a power play that's 30% over, a couple months or whatever. And when we're able to use those stats, it just makes us do a better job of telling the story.
Yeah, it's incredibly well put. It's history and it's achievements and it's a story, and I love that. It just makes such a difference, right? In terms of one being able to know that, people care enough to keep track of these things and to follow these things and to put value on, these markers, right? So as a player, knowing that your stats are taken correctly, it's a great feeling. It's an incredibly satisfying feeling. It really is. And I'll say I think Mike, the first time I think I might have ever seen you or interacted with you on the internet was I was leaving college and I was entering the draft for the NWHL at the time. And I remember seeing a tweet, if you had tagged me or somebody had tagged me in it, and it was just a thread of clips from my collegiate career, and you had highlighted me as a potential draftee. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, this is the coolest thing. You had clips from my sophomore year, from my junior year, my senior. Like, I was just blown away. And like, as a player, I was starstruck and it was such a cool moment for me. So, I can certainly speak from personal experience how much this matters. But it goes beyond just moments like that. It goes so much further. And I know that it's just had a huge influence in the women's hockey world on the athletes, the fans, anybody who's really interested in the sport. It's incredible what you're doing, and it's telling a story. And I think that there's so many amazing stories in this sport that it's really fun to be a part of. And I'm really glad that you're here and glad that you're in the sport of women's hockey. Next, I would love to go into the creation and kind of the story, I guess, behind their hockey counts, which used to be her hockey counts. And I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on the name change and what kind of motivated you and drove you to do that.
Yeah, so it started as her hockey counts just because I'm a sucker for alliteration. And I
Mhm.
thought it was clever, like counting, it counts, it matters.
Yeah, it does.
And like a lot of the stats that I do are basic, we call them like counting stats. It's like how many primary assists you have, or how many shots on goals you have, how many shots you face. And as like some of the goalie statistics we can do like shots against per 60 to measure things like workload. It's all just counting, right? You don't have to get into crazy formulas. And it was there, and like I had her hockey counts as the name, and I felt good about that. And then it occurred to me that like, yeah, but Harrison Brown is part of the history
Mhm.
of this league.
Yes, he is.
Those are not Harrison's pronouns. I thought long and hard about that, and I was like, yeah, why not make it so that it's for everyone? And I was like, is there a way I can do that and be true to what I was doing? I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I make that change? It didn't take a lot of thought. Like I talked to a couple friends who are trans and non-binary, and I said, like, how do you feel about this? And they said, that'd be really cool to do it that way. And I said, like, is there a way to do it where I just want to make sure I do it for the right reasons? I want to make sure everyone knows, like, what is this about? Because I knew there might be some people who are like, oh, you're taking something away from those who identify as, she, her, just with people get really, really intense about pronouns, which always boggles my mind. But I knew that there might be some pushback, but I said like, screw it, fuck it. Like
Yeah.
it's a little gesture I can do to kind of make it clear that like this is for everyone, and it was easy, and that was the biggest takeaway I had from it. I had all this nervous energy. I was like, oh boy, people are going to be mean. Some people are going to be shitty about it. And I was like, yeah, but think about what people have to deal with this because they're trans face every day. And I was like, this is nothing. It's a little gesture I can do. So that's what I did. It was just a quick, for me, it was a quick logo change and just a quick little message to everyone that, every time you visit my stats, it's, to make it abundantly clear, like this is for everybody. It's not just one group or another group. This is for everyone, regardless of how they identify. So would do it again at the drop of a hat because it was definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah, I loved it. And it just, I think you said it best. Why not include everyone, right? Like you have the opportunity to, and you did. And I love that you did that. I thought it was super cool when I saw that on Twitter. And, I just think it's a great representation of the legacy of your work. Honestly, hats off. I think it's a great thing, and just super appreciative of all that you do. Okay, so before we move forward, I just want to highlight a little story about Mike from this past summer. So I play in the PHF. I'm a professional women's ice hockey player, and I was a free agent this past season. And free agency was a total gong show. And out of the blue one day, I messaged Mike and I was like, hey, you're amazing with stats. I would love to work with you and just, maybe come up with something in terms of contract negotiations, just anything I can kind of do to get an extra edge or just gain some information. So I messaged Mike, and I kid you not, within, I think it was maybe an hour, he messages me back with just some excellent advice about the salary cap and the percentages of the dollar amount that I had been making, and kind of a general guide of how I should proceed going into negotiations. And then I don't know, maybe 10 minutes later, he writes up basically a complete resume of my stats from the past 2 seasons and why I should be picked and why someone would want me on their team. And it was just things that I hadn't even thought about. Like there's one that I can think of off the top of my head was talking about my stats being even strength versus on the penalty kill. And it just kind of elevated, my own perception of how I should, broadcast myself and advocate for myself. And I kid you not, like it just within an hour, like he just pumps out all this information. He sets me up with some other people who can help me with negotiations. And it was just absolute money. So just shout out to Mike for being an absolute beauty. Just wanted to tell that story because no one would probably know otherwise. And Mike, you deserve all the praise. And especially for me, thank you, endless thank yous. But also, I hope other people can just understand how great you are and how helpful you are in this world and how influential you are in the women's ice hockey world, especially for the athletes, and let alone everybody else who gets to interact with you. So, my next kind of question and kind of segue I'd love to hear you talk about, something you've been a huge advocate for and have just been a huge supporter for, is the salary disclosure for teams and players. There's been quite a bit of debate in the PHF whether salaries should be disclosed or they shouldn't be disclosed now that the cap has doubled in the past 2 seasons. Could you tell me a little bit about why you think this is important and kind of what motivated you to head this project and the database that you've created to allow players, fans, everybody to get access to this information?
Yeah, so it kind of, well, first, thank you again. Very kind. It kind of started with Elliot Friedman had reported that like what Bucky was making, that Bucky was going to be the first 80K player. And that was like this, 80,000 US, like that's a living wage, right?
Mhm.
That's huge for pro women's hockey. It was this landmark deal. And I was like, yeah, we had disclosed salaries here and there in the history of the PHF and the NWHL before, the rebrand. And it occurred to me like, there's more money than ever before. And I know from just talking to players, over the last half dozen years, like almost everyone negotiates for themselves and almost everyone goes into negotiating with like just the blinders on. They kind of know what their friends are making. They don't really know what they're worth. They know what they made last season, but maybe they didn't get a good deal last season, or if they're a rookie, they're probably saying like, oh, I guess I'll just take whatever they give me, right? And it occurred to me like it's kind of like this imbalance in negotiation where there's so much power on one side and not nearly enough on the other side. The other side is where all the talent is, and like it's what's driving the sport forward. And I just said like, all right, so why don't we change it? Why don't we make it so that I can level that field a little bit? And so I just said like, what do I do? I make Google Sheets. It's like it's the dorkiest superpower in the history of superpowers, right? But I just like put the call out to players saying, hey, if you want to disclose, I'm going to make this database so that you can tell other players what you're making, and that can help contextualize what you might deserve or what you could make. And I put historical data there, and I had a lot of good progress until someone pointed out to me, by the way, there's a non-disclosure that you can't disclose what you're making. And I said, oh, that's fun. So I was filled with so much dread. I was like, I just got all these players who trusted me potentially into shit, but I had never seen a contract. Like it was just this thing of like, okay, well, damn, what do we do now? What happened then was that there was enough momentum built that I think it became the PA reps said like, yeah, but we have a point here that if we have this, everyone benefits when you know what your neighbor is making, especially if you have the same employer. There's less a chance you get taken advantage of. You have a better sense of what your worth is. If in the case of, someone like you, CJ, you can say like, look, I was the starting goalie for a team last season. She's a starting goalie. That's what she's making. I should be in that same ballpark. Or someone who's like, oh, I was an all-star forward. I had 15 goals. She's making 10K more than me. I scored the same amount of goals, or I was an all-star. Like, what's the deal? And that's kind of where this came from. It's just like, let's level that playing field. Let's open that up. And it blew me away how many players said like, I've already negotiated my deal. My deal's done. By sharing my deal, I can't help myself anymore, but I can help my friends, my peers, my opponents, my rivals, someone who like cross-checked me in the NAC one game. But like, that's what they all did. Like, and it really, like every time a player did that, it really resonated with me. It was like, wow, this is kind of special. What's happening here? It's this grassroots thing. Like we can make it better by talking about what everyone makes. It's not about putting players in an uncomfortable position. I think the path that the league took, where it's up to the players, is great. I think one day when everyone can make a living wage and hockey can be everyone's primary career, it would be great if it was just everyone knows what everyone's making. But there are some players, I've talked to, it's like they have an awesome day job where they get paid really well, and they don't really want their day job to know how much they make playing hockey, because maybe their day job sees how much they're making playing hockey and says, maybe you're not going to get that raise. Maybe you're not going to get that promotion. And those are just things that like are realities in women's sports that like just would not occur to folks in the men's sports world, where it's just like, yeah, you're really good at your day job. Oh, by the way, you're an elite athlete. Oh, by the way, you're still going to school. It's like, holy crap. But as you know, CJ, like every team has a dozen people doing that. But that's kind of where it came from. It's just I know the value of the story of when players in the NHL were aware of what everyone else was making, everyone stood to benefit. Like players stood to benefit. They gained an advantage in negotiation. And I feel like I'm tired of all the areas we have to catch up with women's hockey to get it to a better place. And I feel like now more than ever, it's really important when players negotiate for themselves. Like you're not just negotiating like, oh, the difference between making like 10K and 12K is like, your second source of income. This is now like, do I make enough to make a living where I can do only hockey and train full time? Or am I not going to know how much I'm worth? And maybe I negotiate where I do have to have a day job and I do have to do this other stuff. And that's life-changing stuff. That's, I every time I did it, I was like thinking about, a senior coming out of college being like, do I play in Europe? Do I play in the PHF? Do I go to the PWHPA? It's a life decision. It's where do I live? Like, it's who do I live with? And I just wanted that resource out there to help people. And that's kind of what it was. A lot of like, I created resources to help fans and media. And this was an opportunity like to kind of give back to players a little bit. And that's why I ended up putting extra energy into this. I was like, this is like directly benefiting the game. like building. And that's why I got really into it. It was really positive, rewarding experience to see it change and to see, not everyone disclosed. That's totally fine. I'm not going to judge players if they chose to or chose not to, but I feel like everyone who disclosed helps everyone around them. Everyone has their own reasons for doing it, for not doing it. That's okay. But I feel like even having some of that information out there will help everyone. Hopefully, like my big goal is for players who make the least, I want them to make the most possible, right? Because when we have those players who are making the least amount, the PHF, that is 13.5K. That's the league minimum salary. When that 13.5K gets to like a living wage anywhere in North America, like a comfortable living wage where you're a professional athlete, you don't have to do another job. Maybe you do your summer clinics or your coaching, whatever, all optional. But like when that gets there, then I'll be like, all right, roll out the confetti. We did it. Like we got to where we needed to get to. But until then, there's work to be done.
Oh, it's a huge benefit to the game. I feel very much on the same page as you. It's like great if people want to disclose, that's awesome. If they don't, that's totally cool too. But I know I've spoken to a few of my friends across the league and people who have disclosed, people who haven't disclosed, and everyone's just like, man, this is so nice to know. This is so helpful. Like, and that's the reality too, right? It is career changing. You can spend your year, which a year is a long time and a huge for your development. You can spend a year, working another job and just trying to make it work, or you can spend a year just fully investing in your athletic career. And I think, as an athlete, as a fan, I'm just so excited to see where the league goes now that we're getting players who can do this and focus on this full time. And yeah, I think that's the end goal, right? Is everybody's able to do that, and we're able to celebrate all these salaries from top to bottom, and it's not a question of, oh, can I, should I, might affect my other job or this or that, but just being like, look at this is awesome. So I love it. I just think it's amazing that you're doing it, and I can say it's been a huge assist and just help to a lot of players in the league, and it's benefiting the game all around. So it's great work that you're doing. It's really quite incredible.
I just want to add, there's been like, it's always been, I had like mixed feelings when people would be like, oh man, she got robbed. That's all she's making. And I feel like we can have those conversations one day and be really blunt about, oh, maybe she's not getting what she's worth or what have you. But like, I think something that was lost on a lot of people, fans and media, is just like every contract we've seen disclosed is the biggest contract of that player's life and of
Yes.
that and their family. Like every pro contract is a massive achievement. It's an acknowledgement that you're one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
There's only so many places to play pro. You landed on one of those rosters. And I feel like that's something I wanted to make sure is we celebrate it. Like we had players who made league minimum or just a little bit above league minimum who chose to disclose because they knew it would help. There some people might be like, oh, she's a league minimum player. It's like, no, it's not the way I see that player. I see that player as someone who said, this is what I'm making this year. I want it known so that it can help my teammate and the next generation. And to me, that's such a powerful gesture, regardless of what that dollar figure is, because any athlete will tell you what you make is not it doesn't measure how good of an athlete you are, how valuable you are to your team. It's just what happened to be negotiated, right? But I hope we get to that space where we have enough information where it helps everyone. And it is really encouraging to hear it. It's been able to help some folks. And like you said, is from conversations I had, the amount of players who went into it being like, oh, I don't want to say too much. I want to make this much. And then they say like, well, you're not going to make that much. So we're going to talk to 3 other people before we talk to you again. And that's brutal to me. It's terrible. So I didn't want that to happen to players anymore. So now that I hope that there's some context where they'll be like, all right, well, I know what some players make. There's a range of like, where am I? How do I fit into this? Am I someone who can almost make a living? Am I someone who can make a living? Or am I someone where, I'm going to be closer to that league minimum? What do I do to change that? It's big. It's big about like whether or not you decide to get an agent and all those other things. Anyway, I could ramble about this all day, so I'll just stop.
No, this is perfect. And I think one of the inspiring things that you touched on was, the reason why people have chosen to disclose, right? Is it's like, oh, well, my contract's set in stone, but this could help somebody else. And yeah, it might help my teammate, but it might help my rival. But the reality is, yeah, we're kind of all in the same boat. We're just trying to get in the same direction and doing the same thing. And I think this year was pretty unique because this is the most money that at least that we know of that has been invested in women's hockey. These are the highest salaries that have ever been possible in women's hockey in North America. So, going into it, we're all just kind of blind as a bat and just trying to figure it out. So all of this information is just so incredibly valuable to be able to have access to be able to talk about. So it's quite an amazing thing that a lot of people have stepped up to the plate, behind your project and have wanted to do it for the right reasons, I think. So it's a great thing, and I'm just super excited to see, what happens in the years to come. I think it's going to be really fun and exciting as a player, and hopefully really fun and exciting as a fan as well.
Okay, so yeah, I want to kind of take a break from the hockey talk. You talk a lot about mental health on your Twitter. You're a large advocate for mental health. I think being a professional athlete is intense and insanely hard, and you have to take care of yourself, as well as not being a professional athlete. Like, life sucks sometimes. Like, there's a lot of shit going on. So I want to give you kind of a space to talk about, like, why is this important? Why do you think that you kind of push it? Why is that something that motivates you to share with your Twitter audience?
It's a lot. I've been in therapy since I was 13. It took a long road to get to where I am today. And there were a lot of stops or a lot of like moments along that road where I wish I understood that I wasn't completely alone. And that's been something that like I reflect a lot about. It's like, maybe someone reads this and doesn't feel alone. It's really simple, but I think it's really important that this idea that like you said, life can suck. We can have awful days and awful moments, and social media can be such an awful thing. This the accelerant to I'm not good enough. How do I measure myself against this, that, the other? Am I where I should be in life? What does happiness look like? That person looks happy. My life is nothing like theirs. And I don't know, it occurred like after a while, like I'm one of those people whenever I look at like how many followers I have on Twitter, I'm like, that's just stupid. It's that many people should not be listening to what I have to say. But it occurred to me, like, why wouldn't I put a good message out there? And that's really what that became about. There'll be times when I'm like having a really bad day, and I'll just remind myself stuff I've learned in therapy, and just like, you deserve your own kindness. Like, I go out of my way to be kind to other people. Why wouldn't you be kind to yourself? And like when I have those moments, I take a minute to be like, yeah, just put a quick tweet out. And the idea behind it is just like put a little whisper of light into the world that I can. And it's nice because it's been very powerful to connect with people about it. And hockey Twitter is such a ridiculous place because it's such this, CJ knows this, like this ridiculous community where we're so many amazing personalities and people who are very just like transparent, open. They tell you how they feel. People who are like ready to scrap at the drop of a hat over anything, ready to go to war over anything. But also, there's people who have a lot in common. And I feel like, you can't meet a couple human beings without finding people who've had mental illness, or they've had addiction in their family, or they've had suicidal thoughts, or any of those things. And I feel like when we talk about those things, we help people. We really do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's one thing with social media is sometimes it can feel cold because it's a screen, but the ability to connect with people and find people that are in the same situation as you or can relate to you in any way, I think that's just incredible to, if you're having a bad day, to take the time to say, okay, maybe this can help someone else, rather than focusing on your bad day and going deeper into a hole, you turn it into something positive. And I think that's like insanely unique in who you are as a person. And I know, like, now I understand, like, every time CJ opens her mouth, it's always a good thing about you. So I understand that, because like just talking to you, like, I'm like, wow, even if I think I have nobody, like, I got Mike on Twitter, like, I know that, right? You know that you have, at least somebody's got your back, right?
Mike's got your back. Yeah,
Mike's
for
got your
sure.
back.
No, I can say on many, many occasions I've been, doom scrolling through Twitter and, say I'm having a bad day or I'm just kind of feeling like crap. And I'll literally see one of your tweets and I'm like, ah, there's good in the world, or I'm like, Mike's right. Mike's got me, man. Mike's got me. And no, for real, it really has, I think, such a strong influence on not just, I can just speak from my own personal experience, but it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference and it matters. And I think it's just an amazing thing that you're doing, Mike, with all of your work, with the amount that you share, on social media and the support that you give out to people. Like, I can't say enough good things about you. What can I say?
This is a terrible podcast and you're terrible people, making me come wiping tears away half the time for whoever's listening to this
Perfect.
podcast. It's
Perfect.
absolutely brutal. Thank you. It's really nice. Like I was talking to someone, like I don't know how to deal with one of the things I work on a lot in therapy is like dealing with compliments and things like that. It's not easy. I think it comes from self-esteem stuff. It's like, yeah, say nice things to other people. Why would you say nice things to yourself? That's so gross. Why would you do that? But it is really nice. Like the reason I started doing it more is I had those connections with people who are like, hey, you said something that really helped. You only got to hear that a few times for it to encourage you to keep being good, you know.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said.
Worst podcast in the world.
I love it here.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So another fun thing that has come from Twitter, at least that's where I learned of it, something you've done, and please correct me if I'm wrong, at least for the past 2 seasons, is the PHF Fantasy League, where people were able to enter the league. They were able to draft their own players under a set of rules, all organized by Mike, and I believe he might have had some friends who helped, but you're able to just participate in this thing around the league. And I thought it was amazing. I've entered it the past 2 years, and I think about how cool is that? I'm able to draft myself as a player and play in a fantasy league. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. So Mike, I'd love to just hear about your thoughts about your fantasy league. And are you going to do it again this season?
I've talked to a couple people who are working on some things, so I might be handing off the reins to other people, which I got to tell you is really good news for my sleep schedule.
I love that.
But it started with I was doing all these stats. I had all these stats. I had done some work with Game Score, which is something I implemented from NHL analytics into what we do with women's hockey. Just it's a one stat that kind of tries to tell the story of your impact on the game. And unfortunately, my Game Score for goalies is just broken. It doesn't work. But it's very hard to quantify goalies, as you know. Stats and goalies are not the best of friends because a goalie can have, allow 4 goals and have an amazing game. And some people are like, what are you talking about? It's like, did you watch the game? Then you know. But that was it. I was like, why can't we have this? I'll make it. I've done that a lot in my life. It results in a lot of work. But like it really just comes down to like, were there enough people interested? And yeah, I think the past couple seasons we had like a group of, I think it was like 60 people each time, which is really fun for something that just like slapped together. But it's now that it's gotten to the point where other people reach out to me and they say like, I want to do this. I'm like, go, take it, go. I don't want to, it's so much work, but you can probably do it better. But there are some really smart people who I think are going to do exciting things with fantasy hockey this year. And it's awesome. I mean, to me, it's just another way to love the game, another way to be that like enriched experience. I always appreciated it as a way to, from playing years and years of fantasy hockey with NHL leagues with my brothers is like, I guess I'll draft this guy. Who the hell is this guy? Now I have to like that guy. And then you end up watching that player's games. You're like, all right, I guess I kind of like them. But it's a wonderful gateway to that stuff of like getting introduced to other players, getting introduced to teams. And like, I think it's a wonderful way for people who maybe aren't too familiar with women's hockey, but you play fantasy hockey for the NHL, like do a PHF fantasy draft. You'll quickly get to learn the players. You'll do some research. You'll get to know your teams. Like, I like this player. Why do I like this player? Look how many goals she scored. She's unbelievable. It's just fun. And that was really the driving force behind it. Is that project was just fun. A lot of the other projects are like, oh God, I'm so tired. This one was just fun. Because it had that end result of like, what do we do? Like raise a little money for charity, do a fun thing, get people engaged, watch CJ draft herself, which was always fun because I felt like we did it like in a salary cap way. I felt like I could have made you any value. You would have been like, I'll bankrupt my team. I'll buy myself. I don't care.
Oh, absolutely. Every time.
I don't know. You're making me want to run it again this year, but it's very, very fun. Honestly, like I'm stoked that other people want to do it because it's kind of a proof of concept that like it's working, right? Enough people are engaged, enough people care. And personally, like I'm of the belief that like if we have 3 different people doing it, make 3 different teams, do 3 different leagues, just be engaged with it all because that's the way it'll keep growing. So that's really fun.
Oh, I love it. And it's definitely working. I mean, I remember last fall, I'm sitting in my house with my teammates and I'm like, guys, who should I draft? And I had chosen the people on our team, but one of the rules was you had to pick, I think, somebody from every team. And I'm like, guys, I don't know what to do. Who do I draft? So we start popping in research and I'm learning about players around the league. And anytime they're not playing against us, I'm like, yeah, I'm cheering for you, man. Like, so even as a player, I'm becoming fans of these people and of these players. And I think you said it best. It's getting more people involved and getting more people invested in the game. And I think that's showing with the interest that you're seeing with other people wanting to start their own leagues. I think it's awesome and it's heartwarming and it's exciting. It's just a great thing. It's really a great thing.
Everything that we've been talking about like this whole time has just reminded me of the quote, rising tides lift all ships. You pouring into people of their salaries or their statistics or stuff like that, like you giving that effort and giving that time to these people is lifting up all of women's sports in general. Like I don't want to get too like big picture type thing, but you doing those things and you like putting in the time and the effort and saying like, oh, this is fun, it was a fun project, like let's keep doing it, those things will lift up everyone around you, even the people that disclose their salary and they're at the bottom end. Like those things will then lift up others, and then as a group you're all just like slowly rising into what people deserve. So I mean, like I'm just sitting here just being like, yep, that's exactly what this is. That's exactly what this is. Like the little whatever you think you're doing, it's impacting so many people because it's impacting them to then do more. Like it impacts us to now do more as this platform of like, we might not feel it that day, but we're trying to add the content and add the conversations and add just like more to the women's sports space. So I'm a huge fan, I'm just a huge fan.
Huge fan. Could we get some autographs after
Huge
this,
fan.
maybe?
Yeah, please.
Oh my God, the worst podcast. Yeah, it was funny, like it was a couple of years ago where it kind of clicked to me that like it used to be this like, oh, we're competing. I have to be the best writer. I have to be the best at this, best at this. And then I was like, no, it's too much. Like, and then I looked around and I said, like, I really appreciate what this person's doing. They don't have enough eyeballs in their work. Why wouldn't I want to lift them up? And I really do believe in that. The rising tide lifts all ships. And I really believe when we take a moment to like lift other people up, encourage, I feel like that's something can be a detriment in women's sports is it's like we need to look at like, oh, what website do you read? Read all the websites, listen to all the podcasts. Like we're not competing for eyeballs. The same people who want to listen to this podcast should be the same people who want to listen to the Ice Gardens PHF podcast. Like engage with all of it. Why wouldn't you engage with all of it? It's there for you. And like there's so little of this in the world. And that's why I always encourage people like start a podcast, write a thing, do a thing. If you do it, tell me about it. I'll give it a signal boost because there's room for everybody. And that's how all this grows. That's how all the sport grows, right? Like every sport and all of women's sports, that's how it happens. And we always hear these data points about like how many fans of women's sports there are, and it's never on TV enough. And it's like, all right, well, let's change it. Let's just keep talking about it. Keep making like I always encourage people like engage with content. Go download the podcast, download it, hit play. Like go to bed and hit play and listen to it while you fall asleep, so it gets the listens. Like it's a big deal. That stuff really does add up. It's like this little motivation like mantra I've had is just like be kind, lift people up. And it's paid off. I feel like it's helped me connect with people. Like it would be my dream to do this stuff full time. All this stuff is just like this part-time passion of mine. Like one day it would be great. And it's like, that's okay. It's okay that it's not that right now because the stuff that I do get to do is stuff that I absolutely love. And when you interact with other people like you two, I can tell that you absolutely love to do this. It's like, isn't that awesome? Like come away with it like full of energy and be like, yeah, I want to do more of this now. Like there are other people who care this much about these things. It's really rewarding. I feel like if we focus less on, I need to be better than X, right? It's like, no, there's space for X and me and Y and Z all in this space. So let's all be in this space together, cross promote, collaborate, lift each other up. I like that message. It's kind of what I'm about.
Huge fan. Huge fan of you and your message. All right, folks, now it's time for the hard-hitting questions. So these are going to be a little bit more rapid fire. You can go into as much detail as you'd like or as little as you'd like. Totally up to you. We're just kind of hitting you with some questions, one off with a couple of funny ones. But here, let's get into it. All right. So, Mike, what is your favorite hockey memory?
Favorite hockey memory. The first one that comes to mind is 2017-18, the Riveters winning the cup. I had been on the beat. That was the team that kind of got me into women's hockey. I got to watch them go from the first year. They weren't the best team that first year, I'll just put it that way. You know, they're a big character team, you know, tries hard, loves the game kind of a team. Watching that come full circle to them winning a championship was really, really, really special. We got to share that moment with a lot of players, with Eric Ayala, who's a good buddy of mine, was there with me. My brother was there. And then afterwards, seeing the team celebrate with the cup with a lot of adult beverages at Red's Beer Garden in Newark, New Jersey was also very fun. So that's the first one that comes to mind. The one that my brothers and I always remember is I remember I think 8 years old when the Rangers won the cup in '94, but I had to go to bed before they won the cup. And I remember my brother telling me in the morning before I went to school, like, they did it, they won the cup. And I was like, yeah, all right. And like, it didn't occur to me. I was so tired. And I remember being on the school bus being like, oh, they did. That's good, right? That's what we were trying to do. But I was 8, so I didn't know what was going on.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it seems like it was a good thing. That's what this was all for, right, guys? Yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, we did good.
Big day. Team win. Love it.
Awesome. All right. If you could have season tickets to any PHF rink, you could just teleport there for the game and teleport back to your home, where would it be?
Ooh. I feel like I want to cheat and I want to be able to wave a wand and go to every outdoor game. The vibes on the outdoor games. I've never been able to go to one. And I know you had such an awesome memory at the last one in Buffalo. Like there's something silly magic about outdoor hockey where the elements are there, you know, your breath is fogging up. Like there's beanies and toques, or depending on what side of the border you're on helmets, like eye black. Like there's just something about it where it's as good as hockey gets, right? So I feel like I gotta go with that. I know that's kind of like a Weasley answer. There's been a couple teams moving to, I feel like, better locations and rinks. I like, you know, Warriors nice. I would probably just, like, if I had to give a cheap answer, I would probably just be like, yeah, I'll go to, was it Canlan or Toronto plays? I would go there.
Yeah,
Just because it's the
Canlan.
furthest away. Just teleport, free trip to Canada.
That's a good
So
answer.
Are you
I
kidding?
approve. Season tickets are coming your way, Mike.
Brown noser.
No, it's true. There's totally a silly magic about playing outside. Yeah, it's a fact. It's just a fact. All right, so it goes into my next question. Who's your favorite PHF team?
wow. I mean, I started on the Rivs beat. The truth is, I try to make it so I'm not biased. I definitely have players that I'm a big fan of just because you meet people who play hockey, and that's one of those things where it's like, I'm pretty tired of this. And then you remind yourself, like, no, you're doing it for some really good people. Every team has a couple players that I'm pretty close with that I've gotten to know over the years, where it's like, it's hard not to kind of root for everyone's success. I know that's like the cop-out answer, but that's kind of the truth. Is I have this rule where I won't get a player's jersey until after they retire. And both times I've followed this rule, the player has unretired. So I have Ashley Johnston's jersey and I have Shannon Turner's jersey, and she unretired. So pretty much all my favorite players are liars. So I'm hoping you break that streak, CJ. So
Hilarious.
Okay, I have a question. I'm going to jump in right now. What is your favorite team non-hockey?
ooh, favorite non-hockey team. I've gotten really into watching the WNBA as a super casual fan. And I had to do the thing where I told myself, like, don't do stats for this, you dork. Just watch it and enjoy it. Because I remember like the first couple times I watched it, I was tweeting out stats, and Erica was like, "Oh boy, Mike, here it goes." And I was like, "Nope, can't do it, can't do it. Don't have that many brain cells left. Can't possibly do this for two sports." But I'm a big Liberty fan. I grew up, like, the thing is, I have all these like obligations to like my dad's teams because my dad passed away. There's like the Giants. I couldn't name you 5 or 10 Giants. My dad was a Red Sox fan. I have a Red Sox hat, but again,
You can have that. That's fine.
I don't know many Red Sox. So yeah, I mean, that's the problem with me. I remember when I would be applying to like jobs as a sports writer, they'd be like, "Oh, you can write hockey. Can you write about the other sports?" And I'd be like, "Sure, I know about the other sports. I've seen them. I've seen what they do with the football and the basketball. I know what they're about. But no, I'm sadly like a one sport brain. That's all I can really do.
It's all good. You got a strong brain, my friend. Very strong brain.
That's going in the Twitter bio, just to
Oh,
add to the way too long Twitter bio. Strong brain. See,
huge brain. Huge strong brain. Amazing. All right, so we got a couple of silly ones left. But the next question is, are goalies the most similar to cats of all the athletes? Yes or no?
by far, 100%. Do we say other positions pounce on things? Goalies pounce on pucks. Reflexes are key. Pretty sure if I did like a laser pointer around EJ, she'd be distracted by it.
For sure.
Oh my
You
god.
leave out saucers of milk overnight. I'm pretty sure goalies show up. Yeah. I mean, I can't, like, there are other sports where I know like agility is big, but goalies are so, they have, like, it's one of my favorite things is sports psychology, where like I only understand like the super fringe parts of it, where I think of this all the time with pitching and baseball and softball and goaltending, because it's like the most important position. Everyone has eyes on you. There's all this extra pressure. And it's like, but also you're a part of the team, but pretty please don't fuck it up for the rest of us, right? Like there's so much like, why did you let in that softie? What was
Yeah.
that? You put that right down the plate. What were you thinking, right? It's like, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, we're all in this together. But by the way, you have to be the best one all the time.
That is a perfect
Yeah.
analogy. Oh my god. Like goalies are weird. Like you always assume pitchers are weird, right? Like, oh, you're a pitcher. Oh, okay. Like, oh,
I
you're a
would be
goalie.
disappointed if pitchers aren't weird. Yeah.
A normal pitcher is almost weirder. It's like outside of the realm of possible things.
Yeah. But I feel like you kind of have to be like, you have to have a certain disposition, a certain mental fortitude. Like I just set up a goal, or I just gave up a bomb, just gave up a dinger. And then now the best hitter in that lineup's coming up. Maybe I give up another dinger. Nope, that's a sketch brain. Can't afford to have it. Shake it out, just reset, refresh. It's really fascinating to me. It's why like I always like I get enamored with like rituals with goalies and stuff. Like I think it's Abby Ives who does like the water droplets thing.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yes.
those little things like that, those mental resets. I'm not sure we can categorize CJ's like 360 spin on the ice as one of those mental resets thing. I think that's more of just like Mario Kart magic, but it's still pretty good.
Silly.
Um, but yeah, it's a very cat-like thing to do. But yeah, I would say goalies are definitely cats, which is why goalies are the best.
You heard it here first, folks.
Proud member of the Goalie Guild.
All right, all right. Last question here, and probably the most important ever. If Franklin, your cat, could speak English, what would he say?
Food. I already know the answer to this. It's- he has an unnatural awareness of what time of day it is. He wakes me up like 5 minutes before my alarm goes off in the morning. I think he understands daylight savings, which is unsettling, really, that my cat knows those things. He just knows like it's time for food. He'll be stone cold asleep and it's like lunchtime and he'll just one eye will open like he's smog or something. And he just knows it's time to go. It's time for the bowl to fill up. And other people have told me, like Mike, Murph, like cats don't get lunch. And I'm like, they don't? Because my guy does. And that's not stopping anytime soon. He's a lunch cat. My vet described him as a healthy weight and said that she wishes him luck on his weight loss journey, which I think is a very nice way to phrase that. So he's been on a weight loss journey for, good 2 years now. He's still on that journey, still wandering. But yeah, it would be food. He's a very sweet boy, but it's just a ping pong ball for a skull with not a lot of substance in the brain.
And you know what? I would say that's pretty accurate to how my brain works during a game as well. Not a lot going on. Kind of like a ping pong, just running around out there.
Trying your best,
Yeah.
showing up for food. Yeah, that's all he would ever talk about is food, sleep, or he would probably say things like open the window. He's a big fan of the open window. He likes to watch the squirrels. Doesn't know what he'll do with a squirrel. Franklin likes to attack spiders, but doesn't kill them. He just maims them and looks at me like, what did I do? And I'm like, I don't know, bud. That's on you now. That's like an existential crisis you've just opened up. You just needlessly maimed another living thing. You got to live with that. And then he'll just go right to sleep like an angel. So I don't know. It's a whole other thing.
I love it. I love Franklin. I love the pictures you post of him online. I think he's quite the character. And I think, this is just more evidence, folks, that goalies are cats.
Yeah, goalies cats. 100%. Got to get him goalie gear. That's step 2.
We can maybe make
I
that
feel like that would be an interesting crossover.
up. I think that would be pretty interesting. Well,
I'll have my
thank
people
you.
talk to your people. We'll put it together.
Let's do it. I just wanted to say thank you, Mike, for coming onto the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch your work, to be a part of it, and just to see the light that you bring to the world every day. So thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure and a privilege, and just keep being you, buddy. You're an amazing person, and this is just really fun to see what you do.
Thank you so much. You're both terrible people, but I really enjoyed being on. Yeah, be kind, lift other people up. When you're kind to others, you feel good. I mean, there's a reason it feels good to be nice, I always say the big thing I remind myself is like, there are some people who are not very nice. And sometimes the kind thing to do is to be kind to yourself and leave shitty people alone. Let them be shitty. Look after yourself.
Perfect. I love that.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode. Thank you, Mike, for coming on. And you heard it here, guys. Be kind, spread light, leave shitty people alone. That's it. That's all you got to do. This week's action item is going to be to check out the PHF. It is opening weekend coming up when this airs on Thursday. So set your ESPN alerts, watch it on ESPN Plus, all of the good shit. Follow them all on Instagram, and keep pushing the 5%, keep moving the needle, and we will see everyone next time.
Go Six, baby.